Well, welcome to the Environmental Advisory Board meeting for the City of Boca Raton. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today is May 22nd, and it is 6:02 p.m. Would the Board Secretary please call the roll?
Certainly. Chair Newman? Present.
Present.
Erica Allen? Rachel Bobich?
Present.
Margaret Horty? Monica Mayotte? You do have a quorum, sir.
I'm sorry.
You do have a quorum.
Yes, I do. All right. So please note the absence for the record. Are there any amendments to the agenda today? Nope. Okay, then we can move on to the approval of the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look over the minutes? Do you see any changes that needed to be made? I guess at that point, we can have a movement to approve the minutes.
Approve. Or,
A second?
I'll second.
All right.
thank you.
Okay, so we have approval of the minutes. All right. So now we can move on to the quasi-judicial public hearings. Are there any individuals wishing to speak today? And if you are, you need to be sworn in now.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to receive is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Be seated.
Okay, would you please read the title?
Yes. One Town Center. The address is 5458 Town Center Road and 1 Town Center Road. The public hearings on items 4A-I and 4A-2 will be conducted contemporaneously as the items are related. A separate vote will be taken on each item. Recommendation to the City Council regarding 1. An ordinance of the City of Boca Raton considering an amendment to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan by redesignating certain property consisting of approximately 0.7 acres, generally located at 5458 Town Center Road and 1 Town Center Road, from planned mobility, or PM, to conservation, N, providing for provisions to the future land use map, providing for repeater, providing an effective date, SPA-23-06/PZ SPA-2023-00026. Item 2, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Boca Raton considering for the approximately 18.59 acre property generally located at 5458 Town Center Road and 1 Town Center Road, an amended and restated site plan approval consolidating Palm Beach County Resolution numbers 76-1168, 88-1210, 89-0711, and 90-1295, and authorizing 1, the reduction of an existing environmental preserve area from 2.1 acres to 0.7 acres, a reduction of 1.4 acres, and 2, the creation of a new approximately 0.7 acre preserve area, and 3, installation of a new landscape and hardscape improvements, providing for repeater, providing for effective date. SC-25-03/PZ SPA-2023-00026. Representative Miskell Backman, LLP. Assigned staff is Heather Wallstein, Senior Planner.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask the members of the board if they've got any ex parte disclosures.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
Okay, then, I just wanted to note that I have some questions from Monica, who couldn't be here with us on board today, that were emailed to me. I don't know if those were forwarded to everybody. Just to me? Oh, they have them, okay. All right, so at this point, I'd like city staff, the Senior Environmental Officer, Heather Waldstein, is that correct?
It's Heather Waldstein. I'm a senior planner with Development Services. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. As I said, I'm senior planner with Development Services. I'm also the project manager for the application on your agenda tonight. The site in reference is located at 5854 Town Center Road and 1 Town Center Road, commonly referred to as just 1 Town Center.
Okay, on here, just, so you're not the Senior Environmental Officer? I guess
That's
that's
Josh.
you, that's right, okay. Josh. Got you. And you both reviewed this project. All right. Go ahead, sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, no problem. So this slide provides an aerial with a location of 1 Town Center. Outlined in red is the specific parcel within the site plan that is the focus of tonight's meeting and request for the amendment. The site plan, which you see up on your screen, was originally approved in 1976 by Palm Beach County. The site plan incorporates several parcels, 2 office buildings, a parking garage, and surface parking lot, as well as the 2.1 acre preserve area. The site plan, and I should note that the preserve area was not part of the site plan until later. The site plan was amended several times over the years, with the most significant amendment in 1989, which included that preserve area that you see on the site plan. And the property was annexed to the city in the early 2000s, adopting a commercial zoning designation of City CHO, Commercial High Office. However, because of the annexation, it does retain the governing regulations of the 2002 version of Palm Beach County's Uniform Land Development Code, also referred to as the ULDC. The request before you tonight is a recommendation for a site plan, recommendation of a site plan amendment to authorize a reduction of the existing preserve area from 2.1 acres to 0.70 acres, which is a difference of 1.4 acres, and also the creation of the new 7.7 acre preserve area with the installation of new landscape and hardscape improvements. I'd also like to note that concurrent with this request is a flume amendment to redesignate the 0.7 acre preserve to conservation from its existing land use designation of planned mobility, and to also adopt a conservation easement over the 0.7 acre preserve area. This slide graphically demonstrates the requested amendment and identifies the area shown in shading as the new 0.7 acre preserve area on the right of your screen. This concludes my presentation. The applicant is here and will make a presentation of his own. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. We also have Josh Bott in attendance to answer any landscape-specific questions.
Okay, thank you. I think we probably have a bunch of questions. Who would like to start? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Does the city consider this area to be environmentally sensitive lands?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, this is Tamash bin Rahman, Chief Planner. If we may, it's typical that the applicant makes his presentation following staff presentation, and then after that we can go through the questions.
Okay. All right. My protocol, any questions for the staff? Is that a point of order? Because on my sheet it says that if we've got questions for staff, we should.
Typically, it's the applicant who provides an.
that answers the questions?
No, staff can answer the questions, but usually after the applicant, it's usually, and I apologize if it was not clear or if it was inaccurate, but typically
Okay.
it's the applicant who presents after staff.
Okay. So I guess we'll hold the rest of our questions until after the staff, or after the applicant has had a chance. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, David Millage on behalf of the applicant, 14 Southeast 4th Street, Suite 36, Boca Raton. As Ms. Waldstein had stated, we are here for a site plan amendment for a project that is generally south of Glades on the west side of Military Trail, just east of the Town Center Mall, as you can see on the screen in front of you. This is a oblique aerial of the site. On it, this was taken January or December of 2024 or January 2025. The large building is One Town Center. The building in the northwest portion of the property is the Medplex building, which consists of office and medical office. And then in central of the location is a 5 or 6 level parking garage. There is surface parking and then other green areas. As Ms. Waldstein mentioned, the applicant owns the property that's shaded, that's towards the south portion of the property. It consists of a surface parking lot and then the open space to the south. So as staff had mentioned, this is for a site plan amendment to abandon the existing private preserve area and establish a new one. This graphic just shows in the orange or yellow color is the existing preserve area, and then the relocated area would be to the south in green. This is just a colored site plan of the area with the relocation of the preserve. It's creating a marketable new development area. As you can see, this new development area is immediately adjacent to the existing parking lot, which makes logical sense of that this is where it would be. To the south of the property, which is on the right-hand side of this slide, is the new preserve. So on the top left is the existing conditions of this area. And then on the bottom right is, again, a colored site plan of the preserve area, which I'll go into more detail. This is a close-up of that area. If you notice those pie-shaped pieces on the bottom of the plan, which is on the west side, there is an existing multimodal pathway that goes along the canal, and these indications on the screen show view corridors. So if someone's walking down the pathway, they would be able to stop, there would be educational signage, they would be able to see into the preserve at the different habitats and vegetative material. This is, the next slide is really just showing that this is a unique site where there's a lot of elevation changes, which provides a lot of opportunity to have various, you can call them habitats, but various materials. The green is an upper elevation. It's at grade today with the surrounding property, with the slopes of the existing area. The white is a lower grade, but then the blue is actually would be excavated more to provide a somewhat of a wet area closer to the water table. And then this orange area would be additional fill that would create something. If you're in the Everglades and you're thinking about a cypress knoll, this would be similar to that, but with slash pines. So again, we're varying the topography here to provide various opportunities for plant materials and wildlife. So the next slide here is the actual landscape plan for the new preserve. There's a lot of material. We provided a variety of different, I would call them nodes, of ground cover. Right here in yellow is just pointing out different areas of a flower mix, which, milkweed, beautyberry. Then the orange in the upper right, and which is really the bottom of that, call it a basin, which on the previous slide was white. This is the cypress and grass flatlands. Then the blue, as I mentioned, is an excavated area, which is a little more of a wet mix. And then we have our traditional pine flatwoods. Again, these mixes continue further south in the project. I'd be happy to answer any further questions that the board might have.
All right, thank you. I think at this point, if anybody has questions for the C staff, we can move back to that portion of this.
Would we like to read her email questions first?
Yeah, do you have a copy of those, correct? Yeah, well, can you address those 5 points, and you can read the ones as you address them? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, microphone. So the first question states, so 0.7 acres of the 2.1 acre property will be rezoned as conservation. What is happening to the other 1.4 acres? What is being planned for that property? So before I respond, I just want to clarify that the 2.1 acre portion will remain. Nothing is being taken from that. Nothing is physically changing with that 2.1 acre portion. And I don't know if we can get the PowerPoint back on the screen. Maybe it'd help to show.
When you say nothing is happening, it looks to me like it's going to be rezoned for development.
Well, it won't be rezoned. It's already zoned for commercial, I'm sorry, for city CHO.
My understanding is it was a current set aside for preservation.
So it's not set aside for preservation, but it's identified on the current site plan as a preservation area.
Yeah, but it's in our city code that when you develop a property, that a certain percentage of it, I think it's what, 25%, and based on the original measurements of that parcel, that preservation area is about 25%. So are you saying that area won't be preserved? Because it says future site plan, like they're going to build on it if we do this.
Hey, Rick, can we have the PowerPoint back up so we can visually all see it?
That'd be great.
Sorry.
Right, so what I was going to explain is you have,
thank you.
do you have staff's?
Is that good?
Staff's presentation?
I mean, it says right there, new development area. So I'm assuming their plan, the whole reason to do this is so they can build something there going forward. Is that not, I mean, are
That
we?
is correct.
Right.
Yes.
But as part of this application, we're not requesting any entitlements.
Well, I mean, we have to think ahead of here. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that the only reason to do this at all is so that you could build something there
That is-
on an area that should be a preserved set aside based on our own city code. I don't even know why
So-
I would
Yeah.
adjust-
we're making this change.
Object to that statement.
Wait, in a minute, we'll get to your portion. I'm just trying to understand why the city is recommending this. Because you're the person that recommended this? You thought this was a good idea?
Well, it's not me personally.
Well, that's what it says. The city is recommending that. So who, I mean, we're all, the city is everybody. Who in particular in the city said, this is a good idea?
Well, the planning department, development services department is recommending approval of this.
So you were a part of that?
Yes.
And you personally think this is a good idea?
Well, again, it's not my personal decision.
All right, how
It's
many people were
part of-
involved in approving this?
Rick, can I add a question on yours just
Sure.
for a second? So if this is not your personal or sole approval, then why are we not having more members of the planning board at this hearing and meeting, is my question on top of Rick's.
Yeah, I mean, the people who approve this should be here to answer questions.
Correct.
This is so bizarre to me that we're even talking about this.
Right, so, when this property was annexed to the city, As I mentioned, it was annexed in early 2000s. It's governed by the regulations of the 2002 version of the ULDC. And certain sections of the ULDC govern this site, including some of the environmental protections. So this project falls under that.
Okay.
And you brought up the 25%. That's actually in the city's code, but the ULDC doesn't require that for this particular property. So we use that information and also the fact that the site plan identifies this particular area as a preserve, but as you mentioned, it is not zoned for conservation. And that is part of the reason that we're recommending, well, really the reason that we're recommending approval, but another part of it too, and maybe Josh can jump in, is their proposal for the 0.7 acres and what that is providing versus the existing preserve today and its diminished value. Mm-hmm. What we're getting with the 0.7 acre preserve is much higher in value. So maybe Josh can elaborate a little bit on that.
Josh, do you want to answer that? Before Josh speaks, the change was made in 1989 to preserve, correct?
Correct.
Was there a similar conservation designation available at that time?
You want to answer that?
So in 1989, the requirement that Palm Beach County, the Board of Commissioners had was an updated language in the plat, which included some verbiage, but at the end it said that if no longer required in the future, that was in 1989. At that time, they did not require that property owner to have a future land use designation change that would make it a conservation area like we're proposing today. They also did
what I'm
not-
asking is, was that an option back then? I mean, they
I
clearly
believe-
wanted it preserved, but was it an option at that point in
I
1989?
believe so, and I believe there was more restrictive language that was adopted before 1989, but in 1989, at that point, they allowed for a little bit more relaxed language to be approved.
Do you know why they might do that?
No, sir.
I'm just curious why they chose to make it a preserve, but not conservation. I mean, it just seems like, we're sort of mincing words over the same thing here. They wanted it protected.
Right, and at that time, they did not require any conservation easements or anything of that sort. So that's what we are including as part of our package.
Well, I
tonight.
understand they didn't. I'm just wondering, what would have been the subtle difference? Why would they have chosen preserve over conservation easement at that point in time? Like, what would have been the thinking on that?
Based on the records we've reviewed, unfortunately, they didn't provide that distinction.
Okay. I also, when I was looking back through it, it seemed at that point they also, and within the codes, they wanted that property to be maintained as, a natural area, and, including keeping, invasive species out and such at that point. And it seems like that never was done by the property owner. So they were, at that point, they seemed like they were in violation of that requirement.
Yes.
Adding to that, how can you prove that the ones who own the property and, creating all the invasive species, how can we actually prove that they didn't do that intentionally for this purpose to eventually down the line for it to be developed? Like, it seems so shady and it seems so obvious. I'm still a little concerned about the attendance this evening, just as reflected as.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
can
I
echo.
want to know why this guy, why was this does not seem like something the city should be interested in doing, and you said yourself that this is a recommendation from the city. So I would like to know who in the city, and you said it's a number of people, but it's got to be a small number of people. I mean, I assume this wasn't done by the entire department.
And why is that number of people not in attendance for this hearing tonight?
So I'm in attendance. I've been part of this project since 2022.
So you thought
Heather-
this was your decision? Is that what you're telling
Well,
us?
no, I mean, the applicant submitted an application.
Okay. Did
and
you think
so
it was a good idea to do this personally?
This isn't a personal decision. I had to review this project against the code. And this is, so I've reviewed this also with Josh Bott, and he's here to answer environmental questions related to this project.
So it was both of you, as in two persons reviewing that code?
And Ms. Heather Wallstein.
Okay. Okay.
There also, our environmental consultant initially began the review process, and we've also consulted with our other environmental officer, Greg Weinbarg. I believe there were other reviewers that looked at some of the drainage and stormwater, but yeah, we had to review this against the code and what we can and cannot do with the code. I can't not approve something just because of my personal feelings.
No, I'm talking not about your personal feelings. That's not my point. My point is your professional feelings. I mean, professionally, I'm not looking at this, with my personal feelings. I'm just thinking professionally, this seems like a bad idea. Just not only the precedent says, but it seems to go against the actual intention of that piece of property to begin with.
Well, I understand what
Who
you're
was the
saying.
environmental consultant who gave you that recommendation?
No, he did not give me the recommendation. He was, when I first started here.
Who was that?
That was
person?
John Harris from Earth Advisors. He's our consultant.
John Harris.
Yes. But he did not recommend approval or anything. I want to be clear on this. He just assisted us with some of the technical aspects of the preserve.
I would
John-
love to speak to John Harris
Yeah,
about this.
I'm confused. Why is he not present at this?
Well, I'm the one that ultimately handled it. I'm the one that reviewed the landscaping. I'm the one that decided that, that they had met the code for it. So I'm the one you should speak to, not John Harris, not Tomash, not Heather. Heather
Should we
came into
have-
it late.
Should we have had further information provided to the Environmental Advisory Board
Maybe.
based on the
I'd like
conversation?
Josh to go ahead and explain why he thought that this parceling out and redesign was a good idea. I would
Absolutely.
love to hear that.
Absolutely. First of all, let's be clear. The parcel to the north is not being
May we
removed
please
under
put
this.
that back on the screen, just for reference while Josh talks? Sorry.
Yeah. So the northern parcel, the 2.1 acres, is not being removed under this. I understand that there may be in the future a development order. There is not right now.
I think you need to look at this project in its full scape.
I cannot look at it in the way you're referring to, sir.
Listen,
I can only look at it of
I
what
mean,
is given.
I think by not looking at the intention of this project, I think that is a serious dereliction of your job. I mean, come on.
My
Like,
job is not to opine on what they're doing, sir. My job is to review the code to make sure that what they submit matches the code. That is my job.
No, this is a recommendation. This is a recommendation. You're recommending that this be done.
Yes, they
You're not
met-
saying it could be done. You're saying it should be done.
Yeah, the preserve that's going in is a much higher quality preserve than what's currently there.
What's going to keep them from just letting it fall apart like they let the other area fall apart?
This is getting a conservation easement placed upon it, and it is being labeled conservation. The area that's
It's
above
labeled.
it, the 2.1 acres, does not have that distinction
How wide
on
is it
there.
at its widest point?
I don't know, maybe 50 feet? 75 feet? How wide, David?
It's wider than you would think.
I drive by it all the time. It's a very narrow piece of property. And not only that, are you familiar with edge effect? Are you familiar with that term?
Nope.
What exactly is your background?
I have a master's in agronomy, a bachelor's in environmental horticulture. I'm a certified arborist, tree risk assessment qualified. I'm on the board of directors for the Landscape Inspectors Association Broward chapter. I'm a
I'm hearing a
certified
lot of
landscape
plant
inspector.
information. I want to know what's your expertise on ecosystems?
My expertise is in trees.
So you're an arborist. You're good at trimming trees because this is not a
Excuse me?
tree
That's
issue.
kind of
this
insulting,
is a
sir.
yeah. I'm insulted
No,
by the
I'm
fact that you
insulted by
don't
what
know
you're
what
saying.
edge effect is.
I am
It's pretty
far more than an
basic-
arborist.
It's pretty basic conservation science that if you put in a thin stretch of property that
I'm
just
aware
from
of
the edge
edge
effect
effect, sir.
alone, it's going to be inundated with invasive species. It's going to be more subject to microclimate issues. I mean, this what you're suggesting here is taking a core area that should have some barrier to those effects, and turning it into, basically a less valuable piece of conservation property.
Have you been
I-
out on that property,
And
sir?
why,
It's
and why don't we
completely
flip
degraded.
it around? Why don't we turn the north
whole
part
thing.
or why don't we do the whole thing? I mean, this is
Yeah.
this is so obvious a way to get around the existing preserve that is there, which, in my opinion, looking at this, having an existing preserve there would be a much more valuable use of that land than turning this little piece on the bottom that's not even an acre into conservation easement. It's a median is what it is. Not to mention, it has to have right-of-ways for, the canal there. I mean, the power lines, they're not, you can't even grow trees around there.
That's
Rick,
And
can
not
I
I
add?
don't recall any effort from the city making this into a destination point. Like, at least the El Rio Canal has, pedestrian things that you can go up and down it, and it's enjoyable to go to. Even though there's a little sidewalk here that I just looked on Google Map, it's nothing.
It's actually part of the Patch Reef Trail. That is part of it.
All right, well, I looked on Google Maps and it doesn't look very enticing to go.
No, it's pretty
Hang
barren.
out
I
at.
mean, it's definitely, I agree with you. It's an area that I assume that they were at some point gonna spend some money on, but I think
So-
it's got other issues.
To add on to Rick's, just piggybacking off of you, the other two things that I'm concerned about is we are provided these materials, but in no place was there a plan or any kind of information provided to us. So if you did go ahead and do with this, what is the implications and management you have so you are creating this topographically and environmentally different conditioned
Correct.
in a very small acre, right? So what's your irrigation plan? Why aren't we seeing that? Why aren't we seeing the maintenance plan?
The
What is
maintenance
that gonna
plan
cost the
there is a
city?
maintenance plan, there is an environmental assessment there, and the
What
fact
about the
that it will be
irrigation
conservation.
of a varied topographic, environmentally complex environment in less than an acre?
Yeah, it is a little more complex. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I tried to get the best I possibly could to provide as much pollinators and biodiversity as I could within that area. I really pushed for them to incorporate things like orchids and a variety of different wildflowers so that it wasn't just monocultural and it was not just one type.
What kind of orchid were you suggesting they plant there?
They're putting in Encyclia tempensis and Prostechia cochleatus into the trees.
And do you think on such a small parcel with, potentially a high heat index, that's something that could sustain in that? I mean, we're talking a very small area here.
Absolutely. I mean, they grow here in Palm Beach County. I've seen them over in Loxahatchee.
I didn't say they didn't grow here. I'm saying, well, they grow there.
Yeah.
I would assume so.
Because-
They're
The heat index
epiphytic.
would be too high. They would need to be irrigated daily in
Orchids,
that
no,
area.
not if they're shaded. No, I haven't. I mean, I don't see why that would be an issue. They grow
Are your
fine.
orchids that you're referring to personally next to large buildings and parking lots?
These are
and-
not going to be next to
They're
buildings.
next to
not?
Military Trail. They're next to, how wide is it there? 6 lanes at that point? I mean, I don't even know.
I mean,
Can I ask a really blunt question? This is for the applicant. Do you have any plans for that larger piece of land?
Good evening. Again, David Village for the record. We have a conceptual site plan for an office building, but we're not at the point to submit any applications as it relates to it. And I would be happy to go through other points that you've made if you need clarification. Staff did say that this was a environmentally sensitive lands. It is not. Chapter 20 of the city's code is not applicable to this property. That is the section of the city's code that refers to set-asides, refers to the definitions of environmentally sensitive lands.
Do you not view this as a set-aside? I mean, this is a set-aside from the original parcel, correct? That's the way I read it in every step of the way. This was meant to be a set-aside.
Based off of the prior resolutions, the resolution said that the existing pine vegetation was to be preserved on site.
Yeah.
However, based off of the history of this project, it is my belief that the county realized that what they did previously in 1988 was a taking, because they essentially created and stripped all development opportunity of this property based off of the resolutions. They fixed that 1 year later in 1989, where they removed a prior condition that said that this could never be developed. They made that decision. And then what they did was they approved the plat language that foresaw that one day this preserve could easily be gone. As it relates to questions for the degradation of the preserve, originally there was a management plan that was established in 1980s or possibly 70s. Whenever the project was annexed into the city, all files and plans were transmitted to the city. The city and the county do not have records of the management plan, so there is absolutely no evidence of the existing condition of the preserve. So there's actually no evidence that this preserve is actually degraded. This could be how it was originally. As it relates to environmentally
assure you-
sensitive
I
land,
can
hold on,
assure
I'm
you
going
it's
to get
not.
to it. I can get to it, actually. Based off of the definition of, if you go to the definition of environmentally sensitive lands within the county's code, it is a definition that I have it to provide.
I have it if you'd like me to
All
read
right,
it.
it's right here.
Okay.
So environmentally sensitive lands are ecological sites, ecosites, other than wetlands, that are designated on the inventory of native ecosystem in Palm Beach County. So this is an actual document that the county has. I've reviewed it. It's been provided to staff. This was never determined as a quality preserve. Actually, the property on the west side of the canal was graded a B quality. And that was, I forgot the term of art you guys were using, the edging or whatever it might have been. That one did not have those interference, but this one did. And there's actually a interoffice memorandum that was prepared by county staff back in 1988 or 89, which stated that this property, that this tract, that the value of tract 3, which is what we're talking about, as a preserve for native species or plant and wildlife was significantly diminished. So they already said in 1989 that this area was significantly diminished. So I went off on a tangent, but I don't know if there's additional questions, but I can respond to other comments that you had as to there was an option in the county for, greater preservation. That would be designating it as a environmentally sensitive land. As I mentioned, it needed to be a quality. At best, this was a B quality, but in reality, based off its location, it was probably a C quality, which in the parlance of the county was poor. As the interoffice memorandum stated, it was already diminished. And interesting enough is that today we have the lawful right to completely clear the property. Based off of a county ordinance called the Lot Clearing Ordinance, we have the right to clear everything, saw palmetto, all existing trees based off of that ordinance. Now, we haven't. We went in there and cleaned up the property.
I was when I was looking at the old wordage, I thought the property owner was supposed to be maintaining that property. That was did I read it wrong?
And is there evidence to show that we have not maintained the property? We
Yeah,
went
it's
in.
become degraded over time. It's
There's no
clearly become
evidence of what the
degraded.
original conditions of the preserve were. So there is absolutely no way that you could determine.
I've been driving past it for 20 years, so yeah, I think I can tell you it's degraded over time.
But even like without Rick's personal opinion, Google Earth history,
Yeah.
you could show a denser
Yeah,
tree
that's my professional
canopy.
opinion. I'll tell you that. I mean, I would like to speak to the environmental manager who evaluated. When was the last time it was searched for, endangered species by a professional that could do that?
Does the city not have?
I believe there was an environmental assessment performed by his,
Don Richardson.
what is it?
Don Richardson.
Don Richardson?
Yeah.
And they do quarterly or semi-annual
Yeah, it's
monitoring?
quarterly right now. They're doing quarterly maintenance activities, and they're doing replantings into it currently to resolve the NOV.
And then there was a question about irrigation in preserves.
I
You're
have-
not allowed to have irrigation, so what we would be providing would be temporary above-ground irrigation until all the species are established.
I mean, you're creating a very narrow strip of land and if you want native species to grow there, you're going to have to garden it on a regular basis. You were never going to be able to take that piece of property and let it go wild because it will just degrade.
It
will degrade.
It will be maintained. It's not going to be manicured like your typical
I
landscape.
didn't,
but-
I'm not talking about mowing the lawn. I'm talking about any native species that you plant on there, just to the nature of how small the property is, it is going to be impacted by the lack of surrounding, you're trying to create a core area of biodiversity in an area that doesn't have the supporting ecological infrastructure to maintain it. You're creating a desert, an island, if you will, that will have no choice but to just wither away.
Die off.
It'll just die off. I mean, well, go. I don't.
Just to clarify, my question was not just irrigation. It was your short-term and long-term management plan and where that is found in writing anywhere.
We have a long-term management plan.
Why
that-
are we not presented that as the environmental advisory board to
You
the
can
city to hold the
refer
city's
your question
to
intent
staff.
as the most
The
positive?
management plan is part of your packet.
Okay. I've read everything and I don't see anything that's long-term or short-term plan for.
It's a 5-year management plan.
Okay, would you be able to read that part to us, please, or at least point it out in the packet?
Sure, just give me a second.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, give me 1 second. Yeah. So in the 106-page
Correct,
packet,
I'm
you
looking
have-
at it.
Okay, page 85 is where the management plan begins.
I have a question on the management plan. It's stated as a 5-year plan, but in the conditions proposed by the city, I believe condition 14C1, it states the new preserve will be managed in perpetuity in compliance with the purposes of the conservation easement, and it shall be the perpetual maintenance obligation of the applicant.
Sure.
How does that?
I can probably answer that.
Okay.
Sure.
So the maintenance of the preserve is perpetual, but the requirement for monitoring, right, is only 5 years. So I think it's semi-annual. Our environmental consultant will go out there, see if there's any issues, recommend mediation for any issues, provide to the staff. They would review, concur, or disagree, and we would make those changes, and that would be happening every 6 months for the next 5 years, at which point I think, the preserve's established or not, and then we just have obligations to maintain it, remove exotics if they start popping up.
Okay.
How can you prove that you will maintain the property of exotics when the property hasn't even been maintained as of right now?
Allegedly. So it is a condition of approval. Right now, there is no mechanism for the city. We've gone back and forth. As you might have seen in the staff report, allegedly there's violations. Those were amended and then withdrawn. So this isn't from a pure code applicability standpoint. This application provides the city an opportunity to actually enforce anything on this property relating to environmental standards. So we are agreeing to come underneath the umbrella of the city for preserve maintenance, and we're providing a, although smaller, superior opportunity that provide educational opportunities to the public.
You're going to put up a sign.
Are you,
Two signs.
so is there anywhere in, I apologize too, in here, in the plan, that shows us where the signs would be or what the signs will have?
Not what the signs will have.
Okay.
But we would work with city staff
Is it on a certain page in this 106-page document?
It's likely on one of the plan sheets, on one of the colored, at least on, yeah, so on, like, for example, on this landscape plan, you can see the lines with the arc, and I don't have a laser pointer, but on the left-hand side, I believe that darker shading is Sunshine Mimosa, and the signage is right there, right next to the path, and the dashed lines kind of show the view corridor of that signage. There's one right in the middle of the sheet, and then where the match line is on the bottom is where another sign would be.
Is that something, and I think this might be a question for staff, that the Environmental Advisory Board could recommend, saying that if you are going to put up signs, for you to show us exactly what they're going to say and for us to help you or assist you with that kind of information, as well as I'd like to know which page, again, in this 106-page packet, it goes through long-term maintenance within that 5-year plan of irrigation and making sure that, although you're removing invasives and manicuring that, but how are you making sure that the natives actually stay alive and are irrigated properly?
If it's in it, it would be in that management plan, which is 10 to 15 pages long.
I don't see anything in it about that.
On page 89 is method of removal of exotics. And then below that is maintenance and monitoring.
Yeah, and
the
if they don't
maintenance-
comply, they'll receive a notice of violation from the city at that point. We're able to enforce it.
So I do understand, but in that maintenance and monitoring, it does not say any kind of information in terms of how we're actually keeping this preserve alive and moist and hardy for people to see.
Could I add a suggestion?
Yeah.
Depending on how the board chooses to proceed, you can recommend a condition of approval to revise the management plan to address these questions that you have.
No worries. I really appreciate that.
I would just like to create a topic of conversation for the board here. I think the city of Boca has already developed a lot, and I think whatever nature that we can conserve within the city is absolutely necessary. We already have a ton of office buildings within the city, and I don't think another one is necessary. And I would like to just talk to my fellow board members about just, we pay a lot in taxes in this city, and that's part of the beauty of Boca, that we have that ability to, conserve our environment because we pay maybe so much more in taxes.
Erica, I had a question just for you and the board too.
Yeah.
Based on the property in which it stands now, sorry about that. There are office buildings on site currently, right?
Yeah.
So were we given an evaluation or use case of those existing office buildings to see if they're at capacity to even necessitate the need for a new office building on that site?
Valid point.
I think,
I'm just
I think both of those
confused.
are valid. I think both, unfortunately, I think that falls out of our privy for our board. I mean, I don't disagree with you necessarily. I think on the merits of this project alone, I have lots of problems. Now, private property owners, they can do what they want with their property as long as it's within the rules. This, however, to me, looks like they're trying to circumvent the rules in order to build something on a piece of property that was supposed to be set aside as preserve. And, I mean, I don't know why the city is entertaining this. I think there's a monetary gift to the city that's involved with this. Can somebody tell me? I didn't see that as part of the presentation.
That's one of the conditions, and I believe that's to pay for mitigation.
How much was
Of
it?
the-
36,000
Yes.
something?
How did that
Yeah.
number?
That was based on evaluation that the applicant did of the existing preserve and the proposed new preserve.
I have a
That's
question
correct.
regarding that amount. If the city does view this as environmentally sensitive lands, I guess going back to Ms. Mayott's question about what's happening to that other 1.4 acres.
So that's what I started to explain. The 2.1 acres, what the applicant is proposing is to create a new 0.7 acre preserve. The existing 2.1 acre, nothing is physically happening to it. The application that's in front of you is to remove a label on the site plan calling it a preserve area. And in addition to that,
I
create
think you need to
this
back
new
up. I mean,
0.7
he
acre
just
preserve.
said they're planning on building an office building.
I understand.
there.
I'm answering the question that I didn't get to answer before,
I'm
which
sorry.
is the creation of the new 0.7 acre. So they're not taking the 0.7 from the 2.1 acres. I think that was a little bit of a misunderstanding, and that's what I wanted to clarify with that question.
Okay, so nothing is being relocated anywhere else? Because in the
No.
maintenance plan, it read as if there was a relocation of the south set, not just a straight reduction.
So it's a creation of a 0.7 acre preserve. It's going to be located in the further south of the existing preserve. The existing 2.1 acre area will remain physically until such time an application comes in for, as it says on the screen there, new development area. If they propose a new development with an application, that will come into the city and we'll have to review it in the same fashion that we review every other application. But at this point, we don't have any application for a new development.
Is there any way we could just switch back to the screen? I think it's one or two slides previous to the one that's being shown, and it's actually the other way. I apologize. Yeah, this one.
Okay, yeah, that's probably a better
I agree,
visual.
yeah.
So the yellow area is the 2.1 acre existing. The green is the new 0.7 acre preserve that they're proposing. The yellow area, nothing physically is changing with this proposed application, except to say that on the site plan, it won't be labeled as a preserve area anymore. The green area, the new 0.7 acre preserve that they're proposing, will, with this application, receive a conservation easement, a protection that it cannot be developed other than conservation, and will also have
Can't
a
be
new
developed.
land use designation of conservation. The existing property is designated for planned mobility and for city CHO, which is commercial high office. So it does have a designation that would allow development on it today. We're protecting the green.
I mean, I understand that that's, every piece of property is zoned for something, but because of the required set-asides that you have to have, you're not supposed to be built on 100% of the property. I mean, I feel like that's being lost in translation here somewhere. It's a set-aside that's already been used. It's already been set aside. They can't build on it because it was a set aside. And now we're going to do this so that they can suddenly build on it?
Chair Newman,
It's-
if I could just clarify that. If this property was developed in the city, you're absolutely correct. There would have been a 25% environmental set aside, and they
Yeah.
would not be able to touch it. We would have required the conservation land use designation, the conservation easement, everything we're doing now. But unfortunately, this was in Palm Beach
Wait,
County.
even if it wasn't conservation, even if it was just dirt, they would still have to set aside.
Right, but it does not have the same protections in Palm Beach County as it does in the city. So it's annexed into the city, so we are bound by what is the 2002 ULDC.
And we're talking about 90, what was it, 80,
So originally it was,
89. We're talking about 1989 here, that it was designated as preserve.
Right, on a plat without any sort of conservation easements or any sort of protections related to that.
I'm sorry, what does preserve mean? What does that mean?
so the way that the condition
I
read,
want to know from this person over here that's trying to tell me that there's a huge difference between what they meant when they said preserve. What did they mean by preserve?
It was, I think that's the thing, the plat language is ambiguous. It talks about,
I think preserve means preserve. I think it's pretty right on the nose in the name that they want to preserve it.
so in the
Preserve doesn't mean cut all the trees down.
I understand. So the plat language included something to the effect that if developed in the future, that would be not something we would include in our conservation easement, but that was language that was in the plat in Palm Beach County.
Okay.
I have a quick, sizing issue
Okay.
for the plot of land, but I can ask after.
I mean, well, I had one more, issue. In the original designation, that little wedge that you're now going to call a conservation area, I mean, it was already designated for utility, wasn't it? I mean, it's a drainage parcel?
Yes, it's a drainage easement.
it's a private drainage easement
Yeah.
for the benefit of the property owner.
Yeah.
So I have a question based on that area, and it could either be directed to you or to staff. But the existing drainage easement, as I'm looking at it from Google Earth, there's a parking lot to the north-hand side. I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm referencing, and the driveway on the northeast side. All of that plot of land is 0.7 acres, or is it less or more than that? Is it 1.1 acres? What's that actual amount?
Are you asking, like on the screen right now, how many acres is that drainage easement? Or are you asking how big is the parking lot and the driveway and?
I apologize. So it says that the drainage easement is 1.11 acres. But if you look at it from like a Google map or maps perspective, is that all of it? So that's all the way up to the parking lot on the south end and all the way to where the driveway is. That whole plot of land is 1.11?
So everything on the screen with the hash is 1.1.
Okay.
1.
Understood.
So it's 40 feet adjacent to military as it comes south, and then it widens to the full width of that bottom triangle.
Thank you.
Can we go back to the environmentally sensitive land distinction for just a minute? So this land actually meets the city's definition of environmentally sensitive
correct.
land. But you're saying because it's in Palm Beach County, if we were to release the easement as being requested here and all of the conditions, 16A through F, and the perpetual maintenance and the preservation area, it doesn't have the protections of environmentally sensitive lands as required by City of Boca, correct? Like the relocation or the 150% of the,
When the property was annexed to the city and designated city CHO, given its zoning designation.
Correct.
There are also, there's also a section of that zoning designation that provides for the scope and adoption of regulations, and it includes certain sections and articles of the city's code where they do apply, but most of the regulations that apply to this property are from the ULDC. So it specifies which portions of the code apply and which do not. So in terms of the environmental, some of the environmental regulations of the county apply where there is a conflict between the language in the county's code, that ULDC, and the city's code. The city does prevail in terms of language. Hopefully that answers your question about.
Okay, not really.
Okay.
So is this environmentally sensitive land, I guess
Yes.
is my question, because the applicant has stated that it's not.
No, it is defined as environmentally sensitive land within the city's code, and the city's code, in the event of conflict, the language in the city's code prevails.
Okay, and with that, there's an application on page 98 for the alteration of environmentally sensitive lands?
Correct.
Or a plan. Now, does that allow for just the reduction of it, or is there still something for the other 1.4 acres that is not being proposed for this new preservation area? Because I was reading through the code, and there's procedures for land alterations and then determining the payment in lieu option.
Right, so I believe that section of the code does not apply to this project. There's, like I said, there are certain sections that were called out as not applicable, and if it wasn't mentioned, they were applicable. So that particular section, I believe, is not applicable. However, there is a section with the environmental protection in our code that says if they were to remove any of the vegetation that's in the 2.1 acre preserve that's existing today, they can only do so if they were proposing a development. So in the future, when they come in to propose a development, they would also be requesting to remove or alter some of that vegetation. And at that point, we would have to revert to the code and apply that part of the code to their project.
Okay, and now, is that the exemption that you had mentioned earlier? It was like parts 2B and D that was written in the report about why this site is exempt from?
That's actually not applicable to their property. Those sections are not applicable to their property.
The sections referenced in the report? Okay. Okay, I have some questions on the proposed new conservation area as well. You mentioned that there's a small area that's being dug deeper to the water table. Is that essentially creating a marsh or a wetland area?
Yeah, it'll be close. It would be, right now, we labeled it as like a wet mix.
Right.
I think I have a slide that shows kind of what is in it.
I guess my question is, has South Florida Water Management District been consulted on that plan? Because I know they have designation from EPA to vet all wetland creation.
So this is not a wetland, per the definition. This is just a area that is lower elevation than the surrounding one. So this would not qualify as a wetland, if that's where you're going with this.
It is, because some of the plants seem that they would not survive in the dry season, and being in a drought, and not being able to maintain the water, it doesn't seem sustainable from that aspect to me. It also sounds like it might be a breeding ground for mosquitoes.
I mean, this area, this overall area, does not, I mean, during a rainfall, it gets wet, but it percolates and it dries up quickly. There's never any standing water that, yeah.
I mean, it's literally, right now, it's labeled as a drainage area, correct?
It
It's a
has a
dry
drainage
retention area.
easement over it.
And it's right next to, the canal, so I assume it drains into the canal.
Well, I don't believe Lake Worth Drainage District allows outfall into their canals. So it would
From the
not.
bare ground? I think it's.
I mean, it
I'm not
depends
saying
on-
I'm not saying it's piped, I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's an area where it'll percolate down.
Depends on the water table. I don't know. It's outside my wheelhouse.
Well, if it rains there and it's higher than the canal, it'll run into there. That's how.
I'm not
that's
sure
how
what the
gravity works.
elevations are.
All right.
Josh, I'm really sorry, what is your role again?
My title?
Yes.
I'm the Senior Environmental Officer.
Thank you. I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Did you, upon these plans and conversation, did you look at any kind of sheet flow or how the water actually does drain or anything like that as an assessment, or did your environmental consultant assess that as well?
No, we didn't assess it per se. I know that it's all pretty much sugar sand in the area, so it infiltrates very quickly. That's just my personal knowledge of hydrology. But no, I didn't look at sheet flow. If it's a pine flatwoods, though, it should drain very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, unless they line that area
Yeah.
with something, it's not going to retain water. I mean, like they would have to, change the soil or put some kind of non-permeable barrier in there. I mean, it's.
I mean, we could put
just digging
gravel
a
down to
hole isn't
retain
gonna
it,
create
to
a
slow
wetland.
down that infiltration. If that's a condition of approval, if you want that put in, we could have them put in something to slow the infiltration in those areas, create a perched water table for those areas. If you're concerned about the survivability, that is a possibility, I would think.
I mean, just based on the size, nothing is going to survive long-term in this. This is all edge. This entire wedge that you're creating and calling it conservation area is basically not really suitable to be a conservation area. I mean, it's just not. It's too small. If it had a bunch of, like, I'm looking at all the stuff you want to put in here, and I think it's great. I think, the plant choices, I mean, it's a very, the different trees, I think it's well thought out. Do I think it has long-term sustainability? I don't think so. I think that's a pipe dream. I think this is, in the best conditions, this would be fantastic. But, without constant maintenance, this wouldn't happen. I mean, I try to get half this stuff to grow, in my yard, which isn't far away. And, I'm out there every weekend trying to get this to work. And you know what? It's always trying to die on me. So it's tough. It's well-drained sugar sand. I mean, it's not necessarily the proper habitat for half of this stuff.
Chair Newman, I would like to just point the board to a condition of approval. If you go to page 29 of 106, you'll see it's number 14. It talks about an ongoing monitoring report. Please review it, and if there's any revisions you'd like to see, you could propose those revisions.
I mean, my concern is, monitoring is a useful tool, but monitoring alone doesn't do anything. I worked in the city's sea turtle program for years, and we wrote reports every time a sea turtle got disoriented towards a bad light. And those reports went to FWC, and they got to check off a box and say, guess what? They have shitty lighting in Boca. And it didn't do a darn thing to change any of those light bulbs. So monitoring is not a solution to a problem. It's just a piece of information. And with that information, without an enforceable plan, it's sort of meaningless. It's like we've been watching climate change. We've got lots of reports on climate change. And, we haven't done anything about it, but we know it's happening because we've been monitoring it.
I have actually two questions. My first question is for the applicant. So it seems like you've put a lot of time and care into what this preserve is going to look like, right? And how it's going to succeed. Why not submit a proposal to preserve the whole thing?
We want to build on it.
To be honest, I'm not even going to answer that. But to answer the chair's question relating to irrigation, is that if the board's happy, we would add irrigation. We would be happy to add irrigation to the preserve.
But could we also put a stipulation for the amount of time that it would need to be irrigated for?
I mean, within best management practices, yes.
Okay.
I don't even know if we can do it.
Okay, and my second question for the city, and I would also like to please be noted that he refused to answer my question, but for the city, what's going to happen to that piece of property once they start construction on the office building? How do you plan to preserve it? How do you plan to make sure that that piece of that preserve there is not going to get bulldozed and torn to shreds? How can you guarantee its survival for the next year, 2 years, 5 years?
So just to clarify, we're talking about that 0.7 acre preserve that's on the screen right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
So that's why there's going to be a future land use designation change to conservation, and there are a number of policies in the city's comp plan that would prevent that. Furthermore, there's going to be a conservation easement. These are protections that do not exist on the property today.
And do those have like a timeline?
No.
Okay.
So I think my real, what it comes down to for me is, what is the current protection on that property? On the whole thing, not just this little piece.
It's a no on the site plan.
The what?
It's a no on the site plan.
Okay.
That says preserve
an-
area.
Yeah, preserve area.
Right.
So what does that mean? Because, when I asked what preserve meant, it seemed awfully fuzzy to me that, like, I assume it's preserved, right? I mean, that means that they can, at the current moment, they can't build something there. Is that correct with preserve?
Well, unfortunately, there was no legal instrument to back that note on the site plan when it was approved in the county.
Is this in regards to the fact that there's no paperwork or?
No.
Okay.
I'm just talking about in general, when they made the note, you can write whatever you want on a site plan, but in order to protect it, like we're suggesting that a conservation easement be placed on this new preserve. That's a legal instrument with the city. When the site plan was approved, there was a note on the site plan that said preserve area, and that's it. There's no legal instrument to hold the current property owner to maintaining or preserving that area.
All right. So when you say preserve, what do you mean? I mean, when you say preserve, are you saying keep the trees there, or are you saying not put a building there? Like, this is what I'm trying to get at here. Like, can they build, in its current designation, can they put a building on that piece of property? Even if they cut down all the trees, can they put a building on that piece of property?
Well, they wouldn't be able to cut down any of the trees until they submitted an application requesting to develop. It is designated and zoned for development, has development rights, but they wouldn't be able to remove any of the existing vegetation until they were proposing a plan, and we would require them to, based on the city's requirements, provide either mitigation or relocate some of the vegetation that's there.
So, I mean, not to be nitpicky, but when you say it has development rights, you're talking about the entire parcel, correct? That already includes the parking lot, the parking garage, the office buildings,
That's correct.
the whole thing?
The whole thing, including this 0.7 acre,
Yes.
yeah.
So they're not allowed to develop the whole thing, correct?
There are regulations that require them to provide, certain landscape buffers.
Like 25, in the city code, it's 25% set aside?
Right.
So, I mean, when I'm looking at it, it looks like this is a 25% set aside to me. Like, when I do the math, that's what it adds up to. So I'm just, and obviously this was done before it was part of the city, but now it's part of the city, and you said it's subject to city regulations. So isn't this already 25% set aside?
So I'm just looking, okay. I don't know offhand whether this particular parcel is 25% of the entire, but what I was going to suggest is this.
I think it is.
This parcel is 4.96 acres, so that's 216,000 square feet. So 25% of that, I don't know if you're suggesting that be set aside as.
No, I'm saying that this is already the set aside for the entire parcel.
Like the original.
The original parcel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the problem that we have been having in trying to work out these projects is, we have these set-asides, and then somebody subdivides the property, and then they get to have another set-aside, and then they subdivide that, and then they chop it up. And this just seems another case of that. So, I mean, I'm not inclined to enable that process to continue to happen. And that looks exactly what is happening here.
So
And
with
I
the-
want to know, like, is this just a legal loophole that we have to deal with? That they're allowed to subdivide, and then the
Rick.
little piece gets,
To exactly what you're saying right now, it honestly sounds like the applicant is taking advantage of the city for lack of maintenance of that property
Yeah.
and turning 2/3 of it into an office space. I
Yeah.
mean, it honestly, that's what it sounds like the city is in agreement to, that this applicant is completely taking advantage of you guys.
So when the application came in, we had many concerns regarding it, and we have discussed this with the applicant. So with time, the applicant has proposed this 0.7 acre preserve, and we have also made it clear that we would recommend approval, but it would have to have the protections, like we talked about, the conservation easement and future land use map designation amendment. So no, it could not be subdivided again and coming in again, because it would have those legal protections that would prevent that from happening.
Unless there was an
I
addendum
mean, they're
made to the
totally
legal
profiting
I
off
mean,
of you.
they'll come back here and
They're
they'll say,
totally
well,
profiting. Literally 2/3 of it is being made into concrete office space. Like,
Okay, I'll just make two comments real quick, if you don't mind, Chair.
all right.
One comment is, whenever we first submitted this application, there was no relocated preserve. It was the removal of all of it, based off of our rights under the county's code. County code does not have a set-aside requirement. We are not subjected to Chapter 20 of the city's code as it relates to any set-asides. So we are providing.
Hold on for a minute. Is that the city's opinion?
No.
Okay. To be clear, that's not the city's opinion.
That is our legal right,
Uh,
based off of the law.
I think the city
Chapter
has a
20
lawyer
does not-
too, and so the city has a legal opinion.
And they have
it
not
sounds like it
opined.
differs from your opinion.
The city attorney has not opined, from my understanding, on this matter, but I can actually cite to the sections that exempt us from Chapter 20. It is codified in the city's code that we are exempt from.
I think
Chapter
you're having
20.
a difference of opinion with the city on this particular matter.
They haven't reviewed it. They don't have opinion to this, but I can state with specificity the section of the code that exempts us from this requirement. Section 20-4 says that Chapter 20 shall not apply to any land which pursuant to the terms of Section 2361 is exempt from the consistency requirements of the comprehensive plan. If you go to 23-61, this project qualifies under 3 different opportunities to be exempt from the consistency requirements of the comprehensive plan. Therefore, Section 20-4 exempts us from all of Chapter 20. Set-asides, payment in lieu, environmentally sensitive lands,
how
the
did you
definitions.
how did you come to the conclusion that only 1/3 of it should be preservation and not 50%? Or why is it 2/3 office building? Where did you get
How did
those
we come
building
to
dimensions?
0.7 acres?
Yeah.
We analyzed the potential
They can't build
development
there.
pad of, what we would need. And this is what we
That
put
property,
across.
let me clarify, that's an unbuildable piece of property. Where the area they want to put the preserve due to all of the easements and everything, you can't build anything there. That's how they came up with it. The rest of it has enough setback room, so you could potentially build something there. This is a piece of property that they have no use for, and they're giving it to conservation easement. It seems like it's a very generous thing.
They're also giving the city of Boca $36,000 for a
36.
conservation preservation trust fund,
Yep.
which I have no knowledge of as a environmental board member.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I have a question regarding the protections based on the plat language, if you wouldn't mind. So I understand that condition 4 of the original 1988 development order that states tract 3 shall remain undeveloped and shall remain a part of this development since its gross acreage is used in calculating the lot area ratio was then deleted. But it appears to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the platted language still reads, the preserve easements as shown hereon are hereby reserved by MTTC Associates as preservation areas and are the perpetual maintenance responsibility of MTTC Associates LTD, its successors and assigns without recourse to Palm Beach County. These preserve easements are required to be preserved and maintained in perpetuity by conditions 16A through 16F of zoning petition 76-170C as approved by resolution, yada, yada. And I did hear everyone mention that the last sentence does state, if the preservation of these preserve easements or any portion thereof is no longer required, the area no longer required to be maintained in a preservation may be developed. But if this easement is not released, it is still required, correct? Even though it's still planned mobility. Like, is it protected by this platted language and the conditions it states within this language?
I apologize. Is there a particular page you're looking at?
Yeah, it's on page 13.
Tamash, it's on the screen. That's
Oh,
the
thank you.
reservation information.
Thank you. And then the conditions are on page 54.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I was scrolling through as you were, yes, please.
Sure, so even though this property is planned mobility, because it was brought up that this last sentence here says that if the preservation is no longer required, basically it can be developed. But this language itself requires the maintenance in perpetuity of these preservation areas, even with the designation of planned mobility pursuant to those conditions, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
So, yes.
So unless the plat is changed to remove that note, that would still be in place.
Okay.
yeah, I think the argument he was making is it's been degraded, so it's no longer applicable. That's what he was trying to say, is that it's not, it's, you know, it's no longer worth maintaining because it no longer has the characteristics that would require it.
Oh, I didn't see language that said if it's degraded, that removes the conditions.
No, I think that's what this is saying. If it's no longer required, you know, because it's no longer needs to be preserved because it's no longer there. I mean, that was the argument you were making, is that this is not, you know, you were saying that allegedly it may never have been a quality of property worthy of protecting. That's the argument you were making.
Based off of the evidence,
But based off of the evidence that you
That is
have,
correct.
yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, the
based off of
evidence
other
is-
evidence is that it hasn't been properly maintained. I mean,
I've been provided no such evidence from the city or from the board. But yes, based off of the record, from the county records, this has always been considered a diminished area. And just because it's been 30 or 40 years since that point doesn't mean that has gotten any better.
I'm, you know, you say that, but then again, it was designated as preserve, so I'm not, those are two sort of competing theories on this piece of property, whether it was diminished or whether it was worthy of preserving.
So, and I just, from the information I know, from other projects I've done within the county that have older site plans, whenever they had these preservation areas, it was the preservation of, say, a tree, not the general area. And I know that because I'm working on a project somewhere else in Lantana area, and it had similar notes on their site plans regarding preservation, but it was determined, at least in that case, that it was actually specific to trees. So they were actually able to today, without changing anything, develop around the trees. And in this instance, it was a parking lot, so they meandered around them. I can't tell you what they thought of 30 years ago, but I do know that the county commission at that point said, hey, we're not going to allow them to develop track 3, which we're talking about. But they had a change of heart within a year, and my thought of why they did that was because what they were doing was a taking without compensation. They said, your property, you can't develop because there's pine trees on it. And then probably, between the attorneys or the applicants or whoever it was at that time said, we're doing the wrong thing. And they specifically amended the development order in 1989, which I believe is R89-711, which specifically removed that condition that said that this area was undevelopable. They added new conditions relating to the preservation of existing pine trees that are interior or within landscape buffers.
Yeah, it sounds like they buckled to the threat of a lawsuit. That's what it sounds like.
Can I speak to my board members for a second?
Sure.
So as an environmental specialist sitting on the environmental advisory board for the city, I did look at Google Earth historic imagery as we were talking here. And from 2025 until 1985, and that's every year, there's a picture of the property, and you can see that. There's abundant canopy coverage, there's lots of vegetation, and then between 2024 and 2025, it's become like a barren landscape.
Okay.
And that is quite obvious, so.
Well, in the last year, they did remove exotic species from the site, though. That was in the...
Yeah.
But with that, even with the exotics, let's try to, if it doesn't work in this area with exotics and the mitigation, if they're not doing the controlled burns or things like that, my question is how is, and I think someone else, I think Rick, you might have raised this, how is the smaller preserve area going to prevail or move forward?
Yeah.
Especially with chemical applications in place of fire that doesn't keep out the exotics or things like that. It doesn't seem a resilient or sustainable plan moving forward to keep that area.
Does not seem like a long-term sustainable plan.
Correct.
And let me pose this back to the city representatives here. I don't see that like a major upside in the change other than, that like the protection for that little corner in the planting of those plants, yeah, that's great, but it's basically, just like a little garden there. And what they get out of it is the ability to develop a much larger space that currently has the designation of a preserve. And for whatever that means, apparently it's not clear enough. So all I see is you're asking us to make a decision about this so that they can change the designation of a piece of property so that they can build a structure. And I don't see like a major upside to this project. I think that it looks like they're just trying to circumvent an existing protection to the property. And I don't know if that's the way the city views this. I understand you're looking at a particular project, but I don't see how this was an upside. Like, why was this being said, oh, this is a good idea? Again, like that decision-making process, I would like to get in the head of the people who said that we recommend this project going forward.
So when we started review of this project, the applicant proposed to eliminate the preserve area and not propose any sort of conservation area, easement, et cetera. We issued our comments. We reviewed the project against the city code, and based on the city code with the 25% environmental set aside, working with the applicant, this is the final product we came up with, and these are the conditions of approval that we're recommending with this new 0.7 acre conservation area.
I have a question for staff really fast. Does the city of Boca already have a conservation preservation trust fund?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And that's used to help with environmental?
Yeah, to acquire new land or perform maintenance activities. It's currently being used in Red Reef with IRC is actually in there doing invasive removal with $50,000 a year of the funds to remove invasive. So that's where it's going to go, and then it can be used, if there's enough, to acquire more land or to perform maintenance activities in our existing preserves.
Thank you, Josh.
I just to follow up on that, I don't think I completely understood. So you said that this project, that this plan was your plan that you came up with?
No, it was not my plan. The applicant proposed a plan.
Yeah, okay.
And based on initial submission was just for the removal with no sort of conservation area or easement. So based on the comments that the applicant received, which is based on the city code.
I'm sorry, the removal of the invasive species or the removal of all the vegetation?
The removal of the 2.1 acre with no new conservation area.
I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding. What are they removing?
So the applicant's proposing to remove a 2.1 acre preserve area and now is proposing a 0.7 acre conservation easement.
Well, I'm sorry, what do you mean remove it?
Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say remove. To remove the note on the site plan that says preserve area. That's what the applicant's
I
requesting.
understand. So they no longer want, they want to pretend it was never preserved. Is that what you're telling me?
They want to remove the note that says preserve area?
Well, when it says note, you're saying they just want to erase they want to take it off of the paper so they no longer have to treat it like a preserve, correct?
It's a removal of the note on the site plan.
Okay. Why would you say yes to that? I'm trying to get my head around why you would agree to this. And it makes no sense. If it's preserved, and it's clear to me that it's preserved for a reason, based on their initial development of that property. Why are we letting them unpreserve it? It makes no sense to me. Why, it's our job to stop this kind of thing from happening. Do you see why I'm so frustrated? Because it seems to me like we're just okay. We'll just let them remove any protection if it makes sense for them. I want to know who in the city thought this was a good idea.
And also, as a reminder, the Environmental Advisory Board for the City of Boca is supposed to hold the best interest, and I'm sure we can read that definition.
Yeah.
For the city too, and I'm not sure if this is the best interest.
I get that there is some upsides to, replanting that little tiny piece that's going to be left behind, that's on a wedge that's completely undevelopable and unusable to a developer. So they're not giving us anything except for some plants that are probably going to die. That's all we're getting as the city from this. And what they're getting is, free reign to build another office building on a piece of property that probably shouldn't have another office building because it's already been developed out and had a set aside to keep, our city, with some more green space in it. It just seems like a bad idea to me. And I'm trying to understand the city's thought process, and I can't get at that tonight.
I think instead of asking who, we should ask why the city.
Well, that's
why the city would unpreserve this if it weren't for the application.
Or would entertain it. They approved it. So, they are suggesting that it's approved. Yeah, why? You haven't made the case.
I think it's, it's our responsibility when an application comes in to review the application. We don't make any determination. It's the city council that ultimately will make a determination.
No, but it says that you are suggesting approval.
Okay, and we are recommending approval based on the information that was provided to us, compared to the code, reviewed against the code, and providing a recommendation, the EAB has every right, after reviewing it tonight, to make their own recommendation. And that then goes to the city council for them to make a determination.
I have a
So,
quick question for you. So when you said that you guys made a recommendation based on the code and what you were provided, did you make a recommendation based on what it is existing now?
the decision was based on the quality, I think, of the existing preserve, the fact that there's no legal instrument that protects it, maintains it as a preserve, other than, as we've said, the note on the site plan. So we're really, stuck. We have the code that we're reviewing the application against, the information that the applicant has provided us, and we're providing our best recommendation based on that information. And we're bringing it to the EAB to make their best recommendation to the city council, and ultimately the city council make the determination based on all of the recommendations.
I have one more question for staff, or it might be for you, or maybe both parties can answer. It does say that the proposed plan will increase the overall density of canopy species to about 65 trees per acre over the next 5 years. Where
Just
did
to
that
clarify, that's
assessment-
from the notice of violation. That is the planting plan that they agreed to for the 2.1 acres. That has nothing to do with the .7.
I'm going to digest this for a moment, and I'll come back to it.
Do you guys have any more questions for? I don't. Well, I'm still I'm torn here because, if we approve this, it seems to me like the city thinks they're getting something that they wouldn't otherwise get. I feel like somebody's got to walk me through this because I'm not seeing it. Is the city's concerned that they're just going to develop this without any set aside? Is that what's really going on here? Josh is nodding. I think that means maybe, because there must be some unspoken thing that's going on here that I'm not getting. Why would the city entertain this?
So this property, I don't want to say strange because that's not a correct term, because we are bound by two sets of regulations. We're bound by this 2002 Palm Beach County Code along with our city code. So I think I had said this earlier. If this project was always in the city and it was developed in the city in the 80s, we would be able to apply everything within the city code and bring it in front of you and maybe have a different recommendation. But because we had to review it against both set of regulations, some which apply in terms of city code, but some which don't, this is why we have come to the conclusion that we have with this project. It's not typical of all city projects. It's because it was annexed into the city.
I think what I'm hearing is that there wasn't enough information that you were able to discover from the county when it was part of the county to know what the preservation definition meant.
So in the 2002 ULDC, there were more limited preservation requirements. When we compared that to our city code at the same time, Palm Beach County did not have as strong requirements.
So what do you think it meant?
That was not clear. It talked about
I think
pine
maybe
flatwoods.
I think that might be the crux of this issue is somebody needs to find out what the county meant by preserved. I think maybe reviewing other projects that also have preserved at the same time, maybe there's language there because the intent of that is what this all hinges on. I think they meant it to be preserved in in the way that it was, and what it sounds like we're saying is right now it's just words on a piece of paper that they could fight about in court and maybe win, maybe lose. But I feel like we don't have all the information we need at this point to make a decision, an informed decision. And once the bell is rung on this, the bulldozers come out and it's over. I think, before I could make a really informed decision, I think we need to really look into that. What does preserved mean to the county when this was done? Was the county saying, you can develop this parcel, but this piece of property can never be developed, it needs to be preserved? I feel like that's probably what their intention was.
Based on our reading of the memos from the 80s, what we saw is they were talking about the pine flatwoods, that this area was a pine flatwood
Yeah,
area.
it was pine flatwoods.
We believe that's what they were referring to.
Yeah.
So
So you think it should be preserved as pine flatwoods? Was their intention, that it should, that it meant to be preserved?
Just to clarify a little bit, we don't really know what they meant back then. Obviously, we weren't there. What's
No, but
there
we've
now?
got, we don't know what they meant, but we know what we know what the habitat was like back then.
Right, I understand that, but what's there now is not the same as what may have been there then. There's been quite a few years of invasives that have grown in there, and there's very little of the native vegetation left. There's slash pines and some sand pines, and I think there's like some rusty leonia and a little bit of saw palmetto, and that's about it.
Those pines are a remnant.
No, I understand that.
It's an extremely valuable, these remnants are extremely valuable. There's very few of them left.
No,
in
I
the city.
agree. I'm personally on your side,
Yeah,
privately.
but so if that was their intention, was to protect that pine flatwood, then we should protect that pine. I feel like that was the intent. When I look at these properties that are all built out, and I guess I don't need to cover this again, but they're getting chopped up through these, games that we're playing, these legal games, and it's not doing, I don't think it's benefiting the city. I think it's degrading, the quality of life for every person in Boca. Every day we lose another little piece in this city. And, do we want to live in a city where our children can't see a pine tree? It's happening. We're watching it happen. I've been coming to this city my whole life, and I've watched every little piece that, was once preserved get turned into something. Heck, we have, developments on the outskirts and unincorporated. They're called the preserve because they were initially preserved, and now they have houses on them. It's laughable, but it happens every day. And this seems like another example of how that's going to happen. And I don't think we have enough information to know whether or not that area has enough protection. You're saying it may or it may not. And that's not something for us to go on. That's not solid. I don't know what happens after this. If there isn't, it's pretty clear to me that they're never going to develop that corner piece that they're giving into saving. And transforming it into a plant community that probably won't sustain on its own, it seems like a poor trade for giving up, a couple acres of preserved land.
I'd like to echo, oh wait, go ahead, Erica.
I was just going to ask, how much pine flatwood is in the section that is to be developed?
That's what it is.
Well, in that 2/3 area.
You mean how many trees are there?
How many will be taken out?
Did
of
we
the
have a
ground?
proper environmental assessment done with the amount of trees?
There was a tree survey in
Yes.
the packet.
What is that number?
There's a bunch of pine trees in there. I haven't done the survey, and I didn't look at it that closely, but it currently is,
So if
a remnant of the Pine Flats community that used to exist there. That's what it is. And it's degraded, like you said.
Going back to your statement of, will our children even see a pine tree?
In the city, yeah, we've got.
If we're just ripping them out of the ground,
Like nothing.
Bulldozing
What,
them.
what does that say about us? What does that say about the city?
I think it's also hard because we're supposed to have the best interests at heart for the city. And the sentence that I'm reading here is saying, staff is recommending approval of this application since the new preserve will be much enhanced and of greater environmental value when compared to alternative of improving the diminished 2-acre existing preserve with remedial plants. And I don't think that old pine trees are remedial plants.
No, they're not.
But, okay, so going back to my original question, how many are going to be taken out of the ground?
Well, I mean, if,
I mean,
None
we
are
have-
being
we have-
taken
we
out
have-
under this. Nothing's being taken out. There are no slash pines being removed under
There are no
this.
slash pines being
Nothing is being
removed.
removed. They're only adding this .71 acre. They're not asking to remove anything. They're not allowed to remove anything. All they're doing is they're creating a new physical area preserve. That's it.
Yeah.
So it'll go
Said
from
he was
2.1 to
not all of the
2.8.
land.
no, he's talking about the specifics of what we're being asked here, not what they're going to do with the piece that they're going to bulldoze and build the office building on. We're not talking about, that's our conversation. That's not before us today. I'm just trying, it's obviously connected. Like, maybe I'm making a large, leap here, but when they show me a map that says future development area, I believe them. I don't think we're talking about, well, maybe one day they might develop it. No, they're planning on it. The whole reason they're doing this is because they want to
I
develop
mean,
it.
our applicant literally said that earlier today.
Yeah, they probably have plans for the building.
The
at this
applicant
point.
also said that he could completely bulldoze the property right now,
Yeah,
which I'm,
but I don't think the city believes that. I think that.
no, I don't think that by definition, that is not what the city.
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Chair, just one housekeeping cleanup item.
Sure.
Just so the board is aware. I want to just make sure, although you're not going to believe me, but the owner is not a bad actor. They purchased they acquired the title in 2021. So the previous maintenance history, whatever it might have been, I just want to put that on the record, that they acquired the title in 2021. August 2021, I believe, is whenever they saw the condition and went in there and did their mitigation or removal of vegetation material. So I'm sure this isn't going to impact your vote tonight, but I just wanted to put it on the record of just this small timing of this.
Is it, on that note, can you explain what your client does? Like, are they a developer or are they an office manager?
Office manager?
Okay.
And then-
Are you the client, sir? Yes, I am. Okay.
And also, everyone keeps talking about an office building. As part of this application, staff requested us to provide a conceptual site plan, and that was what we put on there, an office building. But this could be a bowling alley, it could be a restaurant, a nightclub. City CHO has 15, 20, 25 different uses that could go on this. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think,
anyways.
the question, I think that's not really for our board. I mean, it could be anything they put there. It could be a parking lot.
Could it be a park? Could it?
It could be a park.
That's what I was
It's not
going to say.
zoned for that, so apparently not.
I mean,
The only reason I bring that up is it seems like what's going on in a lot of the municipalities right now is, developers are identifying these parcels that have questionable protection so that they can, take the cities to court over the protection. And I don't know if that might be the next step in this. I don't know where the city would stand on that as the lawyer, but anyway, this meeting's getting kind of long. Does anybody else have any more questions?
I think just a comment to the board. I personally, and as a board member, fear that any kind of recommendations we make this evening may or may not be taken into account by the city as well. and for the city's best intention environmentally.
And to promote what we believe on this board, I think it's important that we go to city council meetings and represent our board at those meetings.
Yeah, I mean, we've
And-
had some disappointing decisions changed by the city council.
And I think
as
it's
of late.
important that we show face at those meetings.
I will
can do
say,
that.
I think, one of the things that we probably, now I'm not saying one way or another, but if we were going to make recommendations on how to make this particular project better, what would they be?
I think we should make conditions regardless, because that was an issue
Yeah,
with one
absolutely.
of the past sites.
Chair, can I interject for
Sure.
1 minute? I don't believe we've opened it up to public hearing yet. Do
No,
you-
yeah.
Okay.
Go.
Do you want to do that, or do you want to start talking about conditions that you'd be interested in?
I have a lot.
And asking questions. You do?
Yeah, I have a lot of conditions that I'd like to add on to this, so I'm sure we all do.
Okay. Should we discuss them, or should we put them, or should we wait?
Maybe we wait, yeah.
All right. So yeah, we'll open it up to, if the staff and the petitioner don't have anything to add. I'd like to open the public hearing now. Do we have anybody signed up? Or yes, okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a card, public comment card. Just for the record, Lynn Newberry, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. My name is Lynn Newberry. I live in Fairfield of Boca, which is right across the street from the subject property. We were built in 1993 and told or led to believe that the preserve across from us would not be built on. I have been speaking with Ms. Waldstein by email. I did mention to her that there has been a sign since last year, a very large sign on that property with a rendering of the 7-story office building that is being built, it says, in that space. So that is our question as to why that would possibly happen, why the preserve, and that used to be, I'm not a professional on what type of plants were in there, but it was a lush green space until, last year, the year before, when it was all cleaned out. Now it's not. And I have bird feeders, as several of us do. Most of the birds that come to our homes are from that property. That has been diminished considerably since they cleared that space out. So I just want you to know that as you have kind of led me to believe that you also agree that that is a preserve. We were told in 1993 that it was a preserve, and now we're going to have a 7-story office building possibly built there. 8 of our homes face that. We will all use on that office building from the 2nd to the 7th floor. We will be able to be looked in our front doors, our front windows. All our front doors are lined with glass. All possibility of privacy will be lost. The noise, the extra traffic, we already have a problem getting on and off Military as it is. And so I just wanted you to know that there are residents and homeowners involved in this whole decision as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Can I speak to the board for a second?
Yeah.
Did we read all of Monica's questions, or Ms. Mayotte's questions?
We've covered a lot of that, yeah. One was, could the preserve be increased to an acre? One was, how will the city staff monitor the applicant to ensure that they comply with ongoing maintenance and monitoring requirements for the preserve and shared use path? And was the original NOV addressed and corrected? And if not, why not? The original NOV, what was that? Yeah, okay. It was addressed. That's when they cleared. Is that correct?
It was addressed, I don't know, about 6 months ago, I think, is when they started planting. So they did come into compliance with that NOV. Also, I just want to add that we are adding another staff member to the environmental team that's going to also assist us in monitoring these preserves and, getting them into compliance with the city so that they're in a better condition going forwards. We actually hired somebody who starts on Tuesday.
Okay. And then the last one was, why are these conditions of approval related to parking structures and CHO permitted used? Isn't this property being changed to N conservation with the conservation easement? I think that is just related to the existing parking structure. Am I correct on that? Yeah. So those were the questions that Monica had. Yeah, so you wanted to address the board?
Yeah, just briefly. Going back to the historical imagery and not talking about invasives or exotics for that matter. These images are taken bi-yearly, if not more. You can go online and look at them yourself later. It looks like, to double check, this property was purchased in 2021?
Title was acquired in 2021.
Okay. So since then, that area has exponentially decreased in vegetation, whether or not that was invasives, exotics, or natives. It's still, as an environmentalist, an environmental board member recommending efforts to the city, a place for carbon sequestering, whether or not it's like, there's so many other benefits. So, and it is like a sand pit now. And this is just going back to 2021. Yes, Erica?
My question is actually for our arborist friend over here. How many pines are in the 2.1 acre?
I think it's about 30 to 40 currently. It's not a lot.
And
left.
how many would be in just the 0.7?
I'm not sure offhand how many he's installing, but I think it's like, what, 30 or 40, David? Would you say? I don't have the plan right in front of me.
So it looks like that there will be about 70.
Pines?
Yes, just slash pines, 70, 70.
Let's see, Google. Does the city have pictometry of that area? Do you know? Because I know they fly it, biannually?
They fly annually by the property appraiser's office. It's typically January or December.
Yeah, but the city they used to, and I don't know if they had to do it anymore, they had a pictometry which had multiple angles flown.
There we go.
So this is either December 2024 or this year in January, which was a flight over by the property appraiser's office. There are multiple angles, north, south, east, west, different perspectives and angles, but this was just one I picked.
Chairman, it's 69 new slash pines will be installed. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it's more than that. I missed those ones. It looks like it's about 80 almost. And then in addition, they're also going to be installing 17 bald cypress and a gumbo, limbo, and 4 lignum vitae. And then some royals and some sables and some thatch palms.
And there's going to be
And do you
8.
have a 15-year plan to make sure that those trees reach maturity?
Yeah, that seems like it's a small piece of property. That's a lot of trees.
Is there a plan?
Well, from what I understand from George Gann, you're supposed to plant very densely.
Yeah.
And then kind of like let it work itself out. That's what I've been told from the Institute for Regional Conservation.
Gotcha.
From the founder. He specifically told me that personally.
Okay. I don't even know how you would get cypress to grow in there, to be honest with you. I mean, that
Yeah, I'm-
seems like a wildly inappropriate planting for
To
that
put
spot.
in that area, yeah. Also, going back to Erica's comment, a management plan for longevity to ensure that those pines that are on that property now at that age, we would have the same vegetation reach maturation and not die off before then.
Okay, so, so yeah, let's talk, if it was to be approved, do you have any stipulations you would add?
Yes. I have concerns with the pesticides that are noted. Garland AAA is proposed, but to my understanding, it's not really used as much anymore. It's not as safe, and it leaves a larger precipitate than Garland 4. So I would like it to be reconsidered. And also the 2.5 rodeo is a glyphosate, like Roundup, with the proximity to the canal and close to the residences. Also, people that are immunocompromised, if there is a trail and there are picnic tables and things in the area, could pose an issue to them if it's on the morning dew or on a windy day or things like that. Those are pretty strong chemicals. And with that, I'd like to make a condition that they consult Palm Beach County Extension agents with that, if this is county, that specialize in the pesticides or the horticulture, and also South Florida Water Management District with the proximity to the canal, or Lake Worth Drainage District, whoever has jurisdiction over that area.
That sounds reasonable.
And I know I spoke really fast. If anyone needs me to repeat it, let me know.
Yeah, did we get all that?
Sorry.
He didn't?
I have some conditions with the trees, too.
Could, regarding the condition about restricting some of the pesticides that were proposed, do you have suggestions on pesticides to be used?
I do not. That would be where Palm Beach County Extension agents would come in, and that is a free service of the state of Florida. That's not adding cost to a project. That's literally, the state of Florida provides that service for that purpose.
SwiftMud and LWDD can also help with that as a free cost.
LWDD?
It's South Florida Water Management
Okay.
District and Lake Worth Drainage District, which they
Okay.
deal with the canals.
We will consult with John Caldwell over at Extension. I know him personally. So I used to work for Extension for Broward County with Dr. Orfanides, so.
Whose responsibility would it be to maintain this tiny little triangle?
I think the landowner would be responsible for maintaining it, yeah. And again, the city would be responsible for checking to make sure that they are maintaining it.
Okay.
How does that, I mean, I've been curious as to how that works. My understanding is a lot of it is due to complaints and then the city comes out, or is there an active plan?
It was code, I believe, that used to come out with complaints, and then I guess Greg's position originally, was it Smith that did it?
Are you talking about the condition 14 that requires the monitoring report for the first 3 years?
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about for the ongoing maintenance of it. The city is supposed to check on these things, but typically they only check on it if somebody complains.
So that was why we requested that additional environmental officer with the budget. That was our goal.
Yeah.
And we are starting our new environmental officer starting next week.
Okay, so they're going to have a scheduled route in the city? that they
We're
go
going to
over?
work that towards where we're going to go after all the private, eventually go after the private preserves and all the city preserves to
Yeah.
bring them back into compliance. That's the goal long-term. It's
So-
going to take time. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
300 acres of private preserves.
Yeah,
So we have been actively working on this project for the last probably year and a half to 2 years. So now we have gone through and identified all of these small preserves that are privately held.
yeah.
And we have identified them. They're all in an Excel sheet with address, property owner information. So that is our goal with this new individual starting.
Yeah, we're also developing a new comp map. I'm actually meeting with our GIS specialist tomorrow to discuss that because I've gone through and I've found all the plats that say preserve on them, and I've noted all the language so that we can then develop that map, and then we'll know exactly where everything is. and then we can go for targeted. We're working on Via Verde right now. Albert Travasso, I think he used to be a council member. They're having some issues there, so we've consulted actually this week with them about that, and they're going to be developing a management plan, and I'm going to assist them with that in bringing their preserve back into a better condition, and that's the goal for all of the preserves throughout the city going forward.
All right. I think that answers that.
I think you still did.
I do. I have a couple more. With relation to the marsh or the wetland area, I would like for that to be reconsidered just in general. I mean, some of the plants like leather fern will die in the dry season. Pickerel weed needs to be in the water 365 days a year. If the marsh can't be maintained, it seems to me like it's just setting it itself up for failure, and especially with the mosquito-borne diseases that are increasing in the county and the proximity to residences, I'd like that bird to be completely reevaluated or removed. Also, I know gumbo limbo is native, but if it is a true pine flatwoods, the hardwoods are going to outcompete the pines if they're not managed by fire. So to manage them by the proposed pesticides is not going to work, and they're just going to take over. Also, the sable palmetto, or the cabbage palm, I know is also native. I'm not recommending to remove what's there, but the sable palms, along with anything in the genus Phoenix, the pygmies, dates, robelinis, and queens, are currently dealing with lethal bronzing that's fatal in 90%, and they're spread very easily. And it's in almost every county in Florida, so I'd like for that the proposed sable palmettos to be reconsidered or removed from the plan.
Just to clarify, it's only one gumbo limbo being installed?
Correct.
Yeah, it's not a lot of them. It's only the one.
Yeah, but I mean.
No, I know. I just want to make you aware. I didn't want you to think it was a lot.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Question. If, just total hypothetical, if the city fails to manage this little triangle, are we back here to, fight against the development of a parking lot or construction? Just what would happen?
So that's why those legal protections come in, and that's the conservation easement along with the future land use designation to conservation. Those are protections that don't exist today.
For the little triangle.
For the little triangle. It worries me because, the city already kind of failed once at this larger triangle. It's just, it's kind of like one of those things like, fool me once, fool me twice kind of deal.
Well, I guess it goes to the definition of preserve and the definition of conserve.
I
Preserve is, it seems to me like a stronger word than conserve. But,
Yeah.
apparently, it's not. All right. So I think we've covered all the things that we would like to add if they were to go ahead.
I think I have a few more too, and I think she still has.
Okay, go for it.
Do you?
I was just I don't have any pesticide recommendations, as I said before, but I would like for prescribed burns to be, yes.
Me too. The city of Boca, the fire department has not previously allowed them. I have had some conversations with our fire department about the possibility of maybe doing in the future. I've been talking to Lee Litsky over at Yamato Scrub about possibly doing a burn in there first as a test burn, but still working on my way there. I want to get the fire prescription certification from the state, but that's not going to be offered until next year in the winter time. So, I have a lot of there's
I think this piece is a good candidate for a traditional prescribed burn. There are others.
I don't think
there
they're
are
going to
small
allow
scale.
it because of proximity to residences, to be honest.
But there are ways
I mean, I still have some confusion as to why the applicant is exempt based on what was in there, exempt from the environmental code of the city of Boca. So I was going to say something along the lines of relating to the environmentally sensitive lands and the rest of Chapter 20, but I don't think that applies, even though I don't understand why they're exempt from it.
They're saying that's grandfathered in the county, I think.
I'm still confused by all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were arguing that they were grandfathered in the old county, but the city disagrees with them on that. So this is one of the major problems in our decision making is we don't have an actual answer on that.
Correct.
All right, do you have more to add, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So recommendations I would have is a short term, which is a 1-3-5-year plan for irrigation and upkeep. So actually not just removing the invasives and exotics, but actually making sure that everything else, especially the natives, stay alive. I'd like a long-term plan for irrigation too. So that could be a 5, 10, and 15-year plan. Just the other thing in terms of a long-term is ensuring, like I said, the longevity and maturation of these smaller natives that you're going to actually plant, and whether that's a short-term or a long-term as well. Any relocation of old growth that you can possibly do if they decide to go through with further amendments.
I was intending on requesting that, if they did, was to relocate or keep in place anything we possibly could.
And it'd be cool. I mean, maybe they're able to create some infrastructure that actually incorporates
Well, that's the
land
hope, and, you know, I mean, slash pines don't really take well to relocation, but,
No, they do not.
you know, anything else that's of good quality, of course, I'm going to try to preserve.
Okay, thank you. I, as a board member, would like to learn more about the educational signage that's going up and any other kind of educational/conservation interactions that we can have with the population of the city of Boca. If you are walking by,
Is there anything you would suggest for the educational signage?
I would definitely, I think the list would go on at this point, but what's located there, what actually needs to help those plants thrive in that environment, what was located there prior, maybe photos of what it originally looked at like in the 80s or 90s, wildlife, flora, and fauna that would traditionally be found in this habitat. Going back to just the further education of maybe what preservation and conservation means to the city. So, having some form of addendum to make sure there's monitoring and ensuring the health and longevity of this system while there's something under construction next door to it, if that does be the case. An urge for the city to look at older plots of lands that had the same coding and definition and see if those are still remaining as a preserve or conservation tract as well.
I don't know that there are any others within the city like this,
Well,
as far as I know.
Or Palm
that's
Beach.
just, you're giving direction to staff
Yeah.
to research that, not as a condition on this
No,
particular
that's fine,
project.
yeah.
Okay.
And the urge to not use any pesticides in this area.
Good.
Yeah.
Erica, do you have anything to add?
Just a 15-year proposal plan to ensure that the mature growth of the new pinewood forest survives.
All right. I guess we don't have any more people left.
One more question I forgot to add.
Can we ensure that there's free parking for the little triangle?
You mean in the parking lot?
In the parking lot, yeah.
I don't,
I think you can make a recommendation saying that. So that if there are folks that want to use this preserve or walk around it or see the wildlife or learn about conservation based on the educational signs that will be up, they will need a place to park theoretically.
so assuring access for parking in the current parking.
So reserved parking for the preserve.
Preserve the reserved parking, yeah.
That sounds good.
Or conserve it, who knows?
All right, let's see what's left here. I got.
Chair, just a matter of housekeeping. I think
Yep.
that the public hearing is still open.
Yes,
Okay.
that's where I was going. So has everybody spoken that wants to spoke, or would you like to respond to any of the things we've said? Go ahead.
For my own clarity, I'm going to just restate some of the proposals that have been made by the board. Reconsider Garland A and Rodeo and consult with the Palm Beach County Extension agents and Lake Worth Drainage District regarding pesticides. Reconsider the wet area. You have concerns relating to gumbos and sables, so potentially remove or replace with a different type of species.
The ones that are proposed to
Correct,
be brought
within-
to the site, not the existing
Correct.
ones, yes.
Prescribe burns if approved by the city fire marshal. Prepare a 1-3-5 plan for irrigation and upkeep, 5, 10, 15 plan, just to ensure longevity. Educational signage to be potentially presented to, but not approved by EAB, or work with staff. I don't know, it's something to talk about. Suggestions for the signage would be wildlife, flora, fauna, original picture of what, say, like a pineland flatwood would look like.
I'd like to make a recommendation too, that those educational signs, though working with the city and likely approved by the city, they go through the environmental advisory board as well.
I don't think that there would be maybe an objection to come to a meeting and present, but I think approval probably will need to stay with staff and the applicant.
Thank you.
And then the last one is, I think someone said, construction monitoring, which I think is probably something codified in the code, but we can suggest something relating to that. I don't know if I missed anything.
All right. Would any, let's see, would any of the participants today like to cross-examine anybody who has spoken today? No? All right, then at this point, I would like to close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second to provide a recommendation. Should we provide a recommendation? You just gotta, somebody has to, unless you want to keep talking about it. And we can talk amongst ourselves, but we're closing it. And no?
My
Anyone?
recommendation is to the city.
We're not making the recommendation.
Oh,
We're just,
Okay.
okay.
Sorry, Rick.
We're still mulling it over. So can I get a motion in a second to provide a recommendation?
Chair, you can make the motion.
Yeah.
And then take a vote, and if it doesn't pass, then come up with another motion.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. So I'd like to motion that we make a recommendation. Do I have a second? We don't want.
What's the recommendation, approval or denial?
Well, we haven't gotten that. That's where we're going.
That's why we're silent.
Yeah.
I'll second.
All right.
Seconded by Horty? Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to, at this point, call a roll vote. I think that's the next step.
Again, are you making a motion for approval?
No, now we're going to take a vote whether we approve or deny. That was a motion to do a vote.
Okay, I think
To
the
end the-
motion needs to be recommendation for approval or recommendation for denial, and then you vote on the motion.
We're getting there.
Yeah. So are we ready to do that?
Sure, I can make a motion if you'd like.
Okay, so
All right,
we'd like to.
Excuse me, so let's just clarify. So the motion is then withdrawn because the recommendation did not have?
No, we're motioning.
It's just that
so-
there's a motion on the table still.
Gotcha. So the motion, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, so is my understanding we made a motion to make a recommendation?
let's make-
And that was seconded.
Yeah. And the recommendation now is either to approve or deny. So we're going to vote on approval. So we'll make a motion to approve, and now we can vote on that. So either if you do approve, you say yes. If you don't approve of this project, you say no.
So the motion that's on the table right now, you're saying is a recommendation for approval.
Yeah.
And that was a motion made by you, and the second was by Horty.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So the roll.
Certainly. So this is the roll call on the motion for the recommendation to approve, just to clarify.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you want it to go ahead, you say yes. If you don't want it to go ahead, you say no.
All righty. Erica Allen.
No.
Rachel Bobich.
No.
Margaret Horty.
No.
No. Okay. Monica Mayotte. Oh, excuse me, she's not here.
She's not
and
here.
Forgive me. And Chair Newman.
No.
No. So motion fails.
Mike?
Can I also ask the city for?
Well, that was what we were doing.
Conditions?
That was what we were doing. We're saying if it were to go through before,
Okay,
those were the
okay,
conditions.
okay.
So
but
to
we don't want it.
clarify, the motion to recommend approval did not pass.
Correct.
The conditions that you proposed, are you suggesting that those conditions, you're suggesting those conditions if this project moves forward to city council?
Yeah,
for
we're saying
approval?
if the
I
city
think-
decides to ignore our recommendation,
Which they have in the
they have
past,
done
and
in
that's
the
why we're
past,
doing this.
that we're recommending that if they don't want to follow our recommendation, which we suggest that they do follow our recommendation, that at the very least, they do these things that we've suggested that they do. And that's because in the past, where we have rejected something, the city has gone ahead and approved without any of our input whatsoever. So we lost the opportunity to have any meaningful impact on these things.
I don't think anyone's hearing us.
No, I just
anyway,
want it
so-
to be, I'm hoping city council hears this.
So I think
Yes, I agree.
So I think in our report to City Council, what will happen is we will report on the decision that was made tonight, which there was a motion and a second, and it failed.
Okay.
And however, these conditions, and we'll list the conditions, were recommended by the EAB if this project proceeds.
And maybe if you did want to add the extra footnote of, we do have the best intention for the city, and we made this because many other projects in the past. like
Yeah, we don't
Richard said.
want, I don't think this should go through. But the reason we said those things is because the city council has a history of not listening to our recommendation
So that would be
and
your third
allowing
bullet point.
projects to go through. And then the projects don't get any of our input because it's yes or no. And they just say, well, it goes as is, and they approve it.
We'll
So,
outline-
you
And
know,
then
like,
we just kind of,
and then-
we wonder what we're doing here for
Yeah.
2.5 hours on a
Yeah, and no, and the city,
Thursday.
and the city has to put us in a position where we feel like we can hedge. Like,
So,
anyway, yeah.
okay, I was just going to ask for some language in the best interest of the city. The EAB would suggest that
They not approve this. That's
not
what we-
approve this
No, but
because
just
the
in
area,
general.
because the area is not an appropriate size. It's not, I mean, just looking for just a little more information that I can provide in the staff report.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's what we've just been, all the reasons we just discussed, that were why they shouldn't do it.
We will describe
Yeah.
all of the things, all of your reasons why you recommended denial, and we will outline the things you have identified about the plans, the survivability, all of those things.
Yeah.
And
But also the discussions on the fact that this
Yeah,
is.
I mean, I believe they have the ability to hear this, can they not?
yes, absolutely.
That's what I thought.
And there's a transcript written?
There's a video.
There's
Okay,
video,
great,
yeah.
yeah.
So they can, I know some of the city council members actually watch those videos. So hopefully they will. All right. Let's see, where do we move now? So we announced the outcome. What is going on here? I'm sorry, my instructional thing here is all chopped up. I guess I can move on to number 5, old business.
Mr. Chair, I think that there still has to be some type of board action. Right now, you had a motion that failed, so you
Yep.
need a motion now that does pass, which would, I assume, would be a recommendation of denial. Because
Yes.
right now, the board has not made
Oh,
any action.
Okay, I thought that was our motion, was denial or approval, and we it was denial.
It doesn't work that way. You-
Oh, okay.
You had a motion of approval, which failed. Now you have to do a new
The
motion.
motion of denial?
for- Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that correct? Okay. So can I have a motion for denial? All right.
My
So-
third.
Your third, okay. Here, now, can we have a roll?
First, who was the maker?
I was.
Newman and Allen. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. This is for motion of denial. Eric Allen,
I deny.
which is a yes.
That's a
Okay,
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds funny.
Rachel Bobich,
Yes.
Margaret Horty,
Yes.
and Chair Newman.
Yes.
Noted.
All right, so, yeah.
I wanted to
There's-
thank the board for their time this evening and their consideration and your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so I think we can move on to number 5, which is old business. I don't think, does anybody have anything?
I think the old business we had was discussing with the city in terms of making sure that we have their best interests at heart and
Yeah.
making sure that they listen. But that's it.
can we get an idea of when this will be proposed to the city council?
So the next step is going to be the Planning and Zoning Board. That's on June 5th.
June 5th.
And then following that, there will be the introduction of the proposed flu amendment to City Council on June 10th. And then on July 15th, I believe.
I'm sorry, this is
Yeah.
all tentative, so
Oh.
we believe that
Yeah.
there's a lot going on with the campus master plan, so we're targeting a date in either July or August for
Okay,
public
but the
hearing.
next step is planning and zoning on
Yeah.
June 5th, you said?
June 5th. And they're also providing a recommendation to the city council.
Okay.
Okay.
I think as a EAB representative, we should go to that meeting. Just-
Yeah, I mean, if we can go
I'd be happy
any
to
of these
go.
meetings.
I will not be in town June 5th.
Yeah.
Noted.
All right.
I have old business.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to thank city staff for their time tonight, and with that, maybe revisit the possibility of having quarterly meetings or other things with the EAB, as we've discussed in the past. I know, and everyone is really busy right now with everything going on, but I would be interested in starting that up.
We are supposed to be here to help.
Yeah.
I think with the additional staff that's starting, it's going to hopefully give us a little bit more breathing room. That's the goal.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Are there any public requests? I don't think so. Do we have a staff report?
Not this evening.
All right. Does the board have anything they would like to report on? I do not. All right. Then I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Yes, aye.
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned at, 8:33.